But thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I
Yes.
appreciate you having today's hearing. Unless you want to hand me the gavel, but I'm guessing not.
Keep hope alive. Yes.
Let me dive in the short time I have. We heard a couple folks speak in their opening remarks regarding equal implementation. I think it's an important topic to bring up. And I think we've actually seen in other areas where photo ID is used, equal implementation being an issue, but also being addressed. In fact, every time I go through TSA, to the best of my knowledge, every single person has to show their ID. In fact, I grabbed a six-pack of beer at Walmart the other day. The cashier recognized me, said, "Hello, Bryan," and then asked for my ID. In the state of Wisconsin, every single person is asked for their ID, I think in part to remove any sort of disproportionate impact to any given group of individuals. It seems like a reasonably straightforward solution to address some of the challenges that may have been brought up in some of those opening comments. I think the private sector has addressed that. And I think it's maybe something other states outside of the state of Wisconsin might want to look at. Let me dive in to Ms. Lori Roman, if I can. Do you believe voter ID increases confidence in the integrity of the election process?
Yes, and I believe one of the other presenters presented that Americans overwhelmingly agree with it of all ethnicities. So it increases integrity, and it also ensures that every single person's vote is not diluted by fraudulent votes. So every person of every ethnicity should desire to not have their vote diluted by a fraudulent vote.
Let me follow up. In your testimony, you quote from a Yale Law and Policy Review article authored by the former Ohio Secretary of State. In that, he said discriminatory intent is the key determination for voter ID laws. In your opinion, do voter ID laws have a discriminatory intent?
No, if applied, as you indicated, if applied to everyone, and without any subcategories, the Supreme Court has already looked at this. So in 2008, plurality of the Supreme Court asserted that if a state's burdens on voting are merely inconvenient, and if its restrictions are not discriminatory, those burdens are evaluated in such a way to defer to the policymaker's judgment.
Thank you. I'm gonna jump now over to Dr. Nazita Lejavardi, if I can, for a moment. Two of your studies use self-reported data about the impact of voter ID on the propensity to vote. Yet there's been other studies using actual turnout data that have found that there was not a difference in turnout in states based on voter ID. Would your data, do you think, have been different if you had used empirical data rather than self-reported information?
Thank you for that question and for giving me a chance to respond. So our first two studies looked at survey data from a nationally representative.
And I don't want to be rude. You can add things into the record, yeah, but I'm limited I got 90 seconds left. Do you think it would have been different? Yes or no?
So our third study did show the same effect, and that was based on aggregate levels.
So in your opinion, you don't think it would have been different if self-reported to the empirical data? The second question. So in your third study, you looked at turnout changes between 2012 and 2016 in 4 states, and according to your testimony, it compared racially diverse counties in those states against majority white counties. Your study compared voter turnout in racially diverse counties in those 4 states to racially diverse counties in states that did not implement strict voter ID laws, and how they would compare. Question, in your analysis and in your model, did your study take into effect variables that could affect turnout, and in particular, such as having a historically bad candidate like Hillary Clinton?
That was not a variable that we controlled for, but we did control for other statewide covariates that might have been.
So you did not control for the difference maybe between Barack Obama and, in my opinion, a historically bad candidate like Hillary Clinton on the impact of minority voter turnout?
We simply just looked at the differences in voter turnout in those counties in 2012 and in 2016.
I will not declare that I have a PhD in statistics, but I can tell you from an empirical data standpoint, just walking around and talking to people in many of these types of communities, that might very well be a worthwhile thing to look to see if you can control for, because I think it's going to show up in the empirical data. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, looking at the time, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity, and I will yield back.